Right.
Did you start that, Jerry?
I did.
Okay, let me start
This one's blinking.
We are recording, sir.
Okie dokie. Is Rebecca going to be here? Or?
Rebecca will not be.
Oh, she will not
She
be
ran
here.
out of time.
Okay. Okay, so we're ready to get started. I'll call this workshop to order, just so I can use my gavel at least once. Planning and zoning discussion, city requirements for minimum house square footage, lot size discussion, animal husbandry, accessory structure height, VRBO, regardless of county action. Okay, I think.
Can I back up a little, give a general overview?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, I don't know that much about this, so general overview, I'll turn it over. I was just going to say, Jerry, if you want to give us an overview as to what you have for the planning and zoning discussion with minimum house square footage, animal husbandry, et cetera.
So just a little backup. If the council just adopted the comprehensive plan for 2020.
Oh, that's what you're looking
As
at.
part of that comprehensive plan, they said, they recommended that the city council meet annually to review our zoning code, different things that are brought up in the comprehensive plan. Part of staff's desire is to get to actually more meat and potatoes. A lot of that was glossed over during that comprehensive plan process. And so we've written down some areas where we'd like to have council input. Now, this is a council workshop. We haven't had a lot of those, and because of that, I want to just kind of reiterate the process. This is open to the public. There aren't any other public members here. Rebecca couldn't make the full meeting. She did ask that we record it so she can review it on Zoom. The other part of it is, there will not be any, or I ask that you not make any decisions. Technically, the city council can make a vote anytime they are in a meeting. However, to gain the public's trust, we don't make decisions during a workshop setting. And if there's a consensus, you can do that, but we're not even asking for consensus today. Today, we're asking for just a general discussion, education, and look at what's going on throughout the community, and then come back for another workshop or during a regular council meeting to have more discussions and future decisions. So with that, and by the way, I'm not even sure we're going to get through all the planning and zoning items, just because there's a lot to talk about. And we've had some good discussions about the other ones, but unless you'd like to talk about them, I for sure want to concentrate on the P&Z today.
Yeah. And I really want to keep this short because my daughter's heading into the delivery room right now as we speak, so.
Give me the gavel.
Yeah. Okay. Jerry, we'll start with you. What do you want us to tell you?
Actually, I don't need you to tell me anything, quite frankly,
Okay.
other than go home and be safe. But, some of these things have been talked about internally as far as staff is concerned. And some of them, when we talk about lot sizes and house size, been a discussion that I've had with Joe Rutberg, I've had with Patrick, I've had with some planning commission members, and I've had with some, certainly some discussions with the general public as to why we have these restrictions and why can't I do this. The other part of it is that we get to the buzzword about these times right now is affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at some of the restrictions that we have, and they could be construed as something that is working counter to affordable housing. And we may have some restrictions that are not conducive to affordable housing. And when we talk about that, we look at lot size and we look at house size, we have minimum house sizes. And I probably need to talk about one or the other first and then go on to the next one. But the first one we have is minimum house size. When we get into the area that is considered our original neighborhood, or it's considered R3, we have, and that's where we have the little lots. We have like 8,000 square foot lots, some of them are 5,000 square foot lots, and you can build on those lots if you hook up the sewer. Some of them have accessible to the city sewer. And you can meet setbacks. You don't have to have a minimum lot size per se. There are others where you need to get up to at least 16,000 square feet minimum in order to build a house that is a minimum of 24 by 24. Well, that's kind of a tiny house, and it's probably conducive, it's more reflective of the area that it's zoned, where you can get to smaller lot sizes. That's the least restrictive that we have. We get to any other area that's zoned residential in Breezy Point, and we have a minimum lot, or a minimum house size of at least 26 feet wide, at least 1,296 square feet. Unless you have a garage as part of your proposal, then it has to be 26 feet wide and 975 square feet with a minimum of 22 by 22 foot attached garage. That's getting up there as far as house size is concerned, especially if there's 2 floors. But that's a minimum footprint on the bottom floor, so somewhat restricted. We look at that and we get a lot of questions about, well, why can't I have a 24-foot wide house? And why can't I have something that's designed a little bit differently, that I'll have all kinds of square footage, but if it's 2 stories high, I don't want it to be that footprint at the bottom, and those types of discussions. And we have to defend the ordinance. Now, I know why some of these things came about. Years ago, there were a lot of trailers and that type of structures that were moved into residential districts, and a lot of the people got a little bit excited about having a trailer house next to my nice single-family dwelling. And many communities put in this type of thing where and a minimum of the 26 feet wide, that kind of eliminated any trailers. The other thing that happened is there's a stipulation in here that says you need to have a 6/12 pitch roof. You take that interpretation literally, that's the only pitch that you can have. And that's very restrictive, and quite frankly, it's impossible to enforce. Totally impossible to enforce as far as the pitch of the roof. Doesn't allow any design other than a 6/12 pitch. When you get to affordability, the house size, I think, is an issue. Today we allow, in the R3, we allow 16 to 20,000 square foot minimums, and those tend to be with a septic system. Any other zone in the city is a minimum lot size of 2.5 acres. It doesn't seem to relate to each other. And I'm assuming that lot size, the 2.5 acre lot size minimum, was to make sure that sewers work properly and all that kind of stuff. But does that really work? In the soils that we have today, we're saying that someplace else you can get down to 20,000 square feet to put in a septic system that works. And you can't, with the same soil, do something less than 2.5 acres. I think there's some discussions that probably should be had about minimum lot size, whether that minimum lot size is too high. I think 2.5 acres becomes a little bit more expensive when you talk about it. It's also very expensive if in fact you decide to tar the road in front of my 2.5 acres. Let alone any other assessments that would be out there. So that gets down back to the affordability and
Sure.
2.5 acres also is sounds nice, but if you gotta mow that every day, that's pretty tough to maintain.
Mhm.
And there's some other areas that are, that's the minimum. We go to I think it's the estate lots or something like that. I think we have minimum lot size of 5 acres.
Mm.
I think one of the things that could be considered in the future is if you decide that you leave the 2.5 acres, but if in fact you were to decide to put a tarred road in front of those 2.5 acre lots, then maybe they give them the option to subdivide down to something less than that, so that they can at least recoup some of their costs for the assessment, and still have conforming septics. Just a thought. Discussion.
I was gonna say, this is kind of a big issue. Get closer to the mic. This is kind of a big issue. So the question, I think the real first question is, how do we want to approach this? The lot size issue is, I mean, it does vary throughout the city as far as what we want to have, or what should we be doing, let's put it that way. On areas that are already large lot sizes, having a minimum size house almost makes sense, but in these areas, where we have a 50-foot wide lot, having this minimum size house that you literally have to shoehorn in order to meet the requirements, may not necessarily be a good thing. And when it comes to making a house that is affordable to a large number of people, having that minimum size house requirement is basically, it's a barrier. And what should we be looking at in each one of these zones for a minimum house? Michael, let me start with you, since you've had a lot of experience on planning and zoning, just like myself. What are your thoughts on this?
On reduce, well, you're mentioning two things. Are you asking about reducing the size of the house or the size of the lot?
Let's start out with the size of the house. Let's start with that. Because right now we have a minimum size house all throughout Breezy Point, correct? Pretty much?
Pretty much.
Yeah. And this actually came, I started thinking about this several years back when that movement towards tiny houses was kind of going strong. And I know Brainerd did allow some areas to have tiny houses on some of these older lots that were really, really small. Because the tiny house is very affordable to put up. And some of them are essentially just park models, or even smaller than park models. Those may or may not be advisable, but this is a resort area, and if people just want to have a summer place, it doesn't have to be 3,000 square feet. So, any other, comments or thoughts? This is a time for discussion.
Well, in my opinion, this is a resort area with several golf courses and a lot of nice homes, and I think we have to be careful, in my opinion, about affordable housing.
Well, I want to make one thing clear. When we talk about affordable housing, this is housing that is affordable as opposed to the buzzword affordable housing that has all sorts of governmental strings and stuff like that attached to it. So I want to make that clear as we're talking about housing that is reasonably priced versus subsidized housing.
Subsidized, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not, well, how about for humanity?
Gary, you do want to speak?
Okay, how
The
about
mic.
when you're building a house to meet, is there a minimum like for building a home for humanity or whatever it's called? And all I'm saying is, we have to be careful
Yeah, well,
and.
let me address that. Yeah, the homes for household, for humanity houses, they have a standard design that they like to build. And that standard design is slightly smaller than what we allow in Breezy Point.
Okay,
So that has been an impediment for Habitat for Humanity to come in here. They do own several lots in Breezy Point, but they haven't built on them primarily for that reason at this point. People have donated lots to them, and so they do own several lots.
Anything less than the 975 with the 22 by 22 attached garage, the only place you can really do that is in the R3 area.
Yeah.
So there is an area.
Can I ask a question real quick? Section 3 says house size in the R3, minimum house size should be a 26 by 26. That's the minimum house size that we will allow anywhere to be built, correct?
That can only be built in the R3 zoned area. Everything else is bigger than that.
And so everything else, it needs to meet the 1296
Or the 975 with the 22 by 22.
or the 975. Okay. And just so we're all talking the same thing, so everywhere else, the 1296, the 26 by 26 in the R3 is 676 square feet.
Yes.
Almost half the size of what we require otherwhere. Right? I'm not talking two different things, am I?
You're absolutely right. That's, it's kind of reflective of the lot sizes in the area. That's basically the older section of town that were platted in the 70s. I think at that time they allowed campers and all kinds of things, and things that the standards have changed a little bit. But still, the lots that are there tend to have to be combined with adjacent lots. The only place you can build on an individual lot in that area is where it's connected to sanitary sewer.
does that minimum area include, that does not, say if they have an attached garage to the home, is that garage included in the minimum square footage?
The house is a 26 by 26 in that R3 area. The house has to be at least 26 by 26.
Okay,
And you're talking both floor, if it's a two-story house?
It's, the way the ordinance is written, it's the footprint.
Right.
okay, footprint.
Yeah, you know, I'm not saying that that's, the standard needs to change either. I'm just saying that we probably need to have a discussion. If in fact you come back and you say, we kind of like this standard, we think this is what Breezy Point should be, so be it. But at least you've had that discussion, and it's happened sooner rather than later. When you know, I think from a staff standpoint, when we get asked the question, well, why do we have to do this? It would be very easy for us to say, well, we just had the discussion with the council and the planning commission, and they decided that that's how they want to see the city progress. It's easier to defend than just say, well, we really don't know why the standards are what they are.
Right.
Or where
Yeah.
they came up with them, because they pre-existed any of us being on the council.
Exactly. And the way the comp plan is written, you know, we're just supposed to look at, should we be considering, you know, smaller houses?
I think one of the things that happened I think the comp plan process was good. I think the problem that it didn't talk about lot size and future land uses and where you want things to happen. It basically, I think we looked at it and said, well, we like what was there from the old one and therefore we accept it and it's gonna happen again for the new one.
Right.
But the discussion never happened, and I think that's more of what I'm here for, is to have the discussion. I don't expect you to come to any conclusion, but I would like to plant the seed that maybe this is something you should be thinking about.
Well, Tom brought up the point of the mini homes, the really small. Is it possible if you allowed that you could put a restriction on the amount of acreage? In other words, it would have to be at least a 5-acre lot or something like that, so that these little places are not, you know, you could have a shack every 50 foot. And is that something that the city council can limit or put a limit on?
I think you could probably do some restricting. I don't know how you craft those restrictions at this point. It probably needs some attorney to craft where, how, and when.
Yeah, and I think the idea of the tiny home or the smaller home is more to target the smaller lots as opposed to the larger lots.
Agreed.
If you can afford like a 2 or 3 acre lot, you're not gonna put in a tiny home.
Actually, I think that,
Well, I don't totally agree with that, because people can come up from the cities, they can build a tiny home and be completely comfortable for 3 or 4 days or a week. But my concern is of having a tiny home every 50 feet. Now, you know what that's gonna end up. So that's why I'm wondering if a person could put it. Then if they're gonna have a 5-acre limitation, obviously I wouldn't say obviously either. You can buy 5 acres fairly cheap in a lot of places, but, well, I tell you, I just start getting concerned. You've been in Alaska and some of these other places. I wouldn't think Breezy Point would want that type of structure or that type of neighborhood, but that's my personal opinion.
from a staff standpoint, I think the times that we've gotten talked to about tiny home has been, it kind of runs rampant. When the county comes out with the list of tax forfeit lots that go up for sale. Folks look at the tax forfeited lots and say, well, can I build a tiny home there? That's kind of when we get it. We haven't had a lot of folks requesting it, other than for those type of lots that are very inexpensive and perceived to be inexpensive.
And that's mainly the R3 zone.
Yes. Yeah, we don't see that as being something that's on the council on a McKee or anything like that. It's basically someplace, typically out behind the airport back here, we have quite a few of those tax forfeited lots that are either too small to build on by themselves, have some topographical issues, but become very inexpensive because of that. So people look at that as a way to do that. The other thing that happens in that whole conversation is that, well, we started a tiny home, but, well, then maybe I'll just bring my travel trailer in.
Right.
And that's a whole other discussion about whether you want that type of living quarters
Yeah. And,
Spattered in between single-family dwellings, that becomes another discussion that
yeah, and that's where a lot of these tiny homes were essentially just customized park models. You know, they can come in on wheels and just get plopped down. Is that the type of thing that we would want to consider on some of these smaller lots? And my opinion is I don't think we want to do that. Just because, you know, they're essentially travel trailers. You know, you can pull them around with a truck.
Yeah.
well, I can guarantee you that, you know, when the ordinance was written, or
That's what they were trying to
they were
avoid.
trying to eliminate
Yeah.
the trailers.
Mm-hmm.
And I can attest to that. I was
Patrick?
part of that.
Oh,
If Gary wasn't done, I was gonna comment.
No,
after
I
that.
wasn't. I haven't had a chance to get my 2 cents worth in here yet.
okay.
So I'm gonna get housing restrictions that you introed with. I agree with you. I agree with the mayor, tiny houses, just isn't a place for that. The pitches, that's your area. I'm no construction person. House size issue, I think we do have a little bit of a problem. I'm comfortable with the current regulation. How that would change would only be bigger, in my opinion. But I'm comfortable with that size. My house isn't far from that size, and I got all the room I need and a nice garage, so. But I designed it that way when I had it built, so I didn't have to mow a yard much. And the 2.5 acres, Jerry, that resonated with me. I think a planning commission needs to look, in the council, at size of our current lots. They've been that way for some time, and I think they are a little bit too restrictive, like you talked about. That's all I have to say for now.
I don't, you know, I understand the reason for 2.5 acre lots.
Yeah, so do I.
I also understand that it's very hard to maintain a 2.5 acre lot. Also understand the fact that if and when you put that tar road by it and you make the assessments, it's very hard to assess that 2.5 acre property. So that kind of contradicted to affordability.
Right.
I think some of the comments I'd like to make, just to, now that we've had the basic discussion, there's some basic foundations after being here for 2 years that I've created. City of Breezy Point's builds a lot, or has a lot of homes built in our community compared to the county, and there's reasons for that. But the important things that I'm looking at are the number of calls we receive each year on 2 issues. One, can they just build a shed? If you allowed people just to build a shed, there would never be another house built in this community in all probability.
Right.
Correct.
2, will you just allow camping? If you go to just allowing camping, you will never have another building permit in the city in all probability. So I guess when I say we're working from a foundation, those are the things we know. So how do we continue to have more homes built, quality homes, so that everybody's values stays the same or increases as we move forward, and still attract more people to come to Breezy Point than anywhere else in this county?
Well said.
Actually, you know, when you talk about this minimum house size, and I think some of the discussions that we've had as staff people started back 10 years ago. And interest rates were a lot higher than they are today. So today, the house size isn't that big of a deal because the interest rates are low enough to support that. But once the interest rates go back up, then I think you're going to get some more pressure to decrease that minimum size.
Can a person own one of these small lots, have a motor home, drive up here for a 3-day weekend, park it on their little lot, and then leave?
The only place we allow camping is in the camping area.
Correct.
So they can't do that.
And we allow camping on lots where there's a principal structure already, on an improved lot,
Okay.
where you can pull it up next to your house, and I believe you can camp
28 days.
14 consecutive days, 30 maximum days per year.
Something like that.
And that's what's in the ordinance. again, that's one of those things that's really hard to enforce.
Right.
And if there's no problems with the neighbors, it doesn't tend to be an issue. It's when there's problems with the neighbors that you tend to, or there's too much partying and late nights and that kind of thing. That's when we tend to have the problem.
Do we still have that caveat as while you're building your house, you can have like a camper?
That we do allow up to 6 months camping while you're building the house.
Okay.
But you have to have a building permit and you have to be making progress in that whole
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
We do get a lot of calls from people, can I buy this lot and put a camper on it? We get that all the time. Quite frankly, it's, because the ordinance the way it is, it's easy to enforce that.
Yeah.
But there are some folks that are.
And we have had, issues with people camping on the vacant lots, and that's why we have it even more restrictive than what it used to be.
Well, typically, we don't get a lot of problems. It's just, if in fact there's some conflict with neighbors, then we get the complaints and we have to do something about it.
Yep.
But there are some around town that, we know that they're there. We're not hunting them down. But,
We just drive by them every day.
well, yeah.
Yep.
Obviously, this needs to be studied, and it needs to be, because well, it needs to be put into a format that we can really wrap our heads around it. And we almost need a small working group that can concentrate on this and come up with some overall recommendations.
I think if you're gonna do that, I think you've got to simplify it as much as possible.
That's, and what you have here, with, R3, R2, R1, et cetera, with all these different options, it's kind of hard to,
This was an attempt just to identify the issue.
yes,
It doesn't have any solutions in it.
no,
And quite frankly, one of the solutions is leave it as it is. If the community says it likes it the way it is, that's okay. But at least you have the discussion.
okay.
One
Okay.
thing I was starting to just fathom with is in the R3 zone, if we reduce the minimum building size, from 26 to something lower, I started thinking about what was just said, that we allow camping on improved lots. You could potentially have bigger RVs and trailers than the home pulling on the lot.
Agreed.
We actually have an example of that. We have I think it's on Red Pine. We have a gentleman that started out with a garage that he's kind of morphed into his house, and then he parks an RV outside. And he doesn't take care of the yard like the neighbor does, so there tends to be a few conflicts that happen. He's gotten a lot better in the last couple of years, but there were a couple of years where that was really
Well, that lot size, it has to support a site well and a septic, so that's 20,000 square foot is pretty much the minimum because of the well and septic, is it not?
Yeah, 20,000 is probably the smallest that you can possibly get. Actually, the ordinance allows their pre-existing lots to get down to 80% of that, so you can get down to 16.
If they can put the well and septic
If
in
they can get
legally.
well and septic on it, yes. And typically, those type of lots, because they're narrow and somewhat confining, don't get a lot of pressure for any bigger houses than what it can support. One of the things we like to tell people or talk to people about is design the house for the lot. Don't pick out a house and then just throw it on any lot that you can find. Again, I think it's more food for thought than anything.
Yeah.
hear what that minimum, what a recommended size would be in the R3 zone. I don't know if I'm ready to talk about the other zones about as far as minimum size. I think what we have now, 1296, 975, at least 26 foot wide, I think that's good. I'd be interested in learning a little bit more about what we could do in the R3 zone. You know, what size of house could be built on existing properties, not having to conjoin them, that would support a septic and a well. I'm not saying I'm gonna go that way. I just would be interested to see what size of house is that could sustain on there. Do you know that, Jerry, off the top of your head? What size could be a good size house for the R3 zone?
I was gonna clarify that a little bit. You do have the minimum requirements, you have setbacks that you have to adhere to. And then you have an impervious coverage minimum or maximum. So that, between those three, that kind of limits the size of what could happen on a lot. But if you have two 50-foot lots, that's 100 feet wide, you got a 10-foot setback on either side, you could build a pretty substantial house on that lot if you could if you don't exceed the impervious coverage standards. That answer your question?
Well, that's assuming you own two lots, though.
Well, typically, the way the ordinance is written right now, if you don't have sewer, you have to combine lots in order to get down to that 16,000 square foot minimum lot size.
Okay.
And I believe that 16,000 is probably the minimum that you'd really want to even think about when you talk about a well and a septic system.
Well, that kind of addresses that then.
Now, if you were to extend sanitary sewer into some of those areas, that presents a whole different option that people have to, if they can meet setbacks, they could, and meet the impervious coverage standard goes up a little bit more, goes up to 30% rather than 25%. That presents you some different options.
Yeah. Do you remember back when we were doing the 2010 comp plan and we were talking about minimum size lots and this kind of stuff, and based on the way we had the comp plan written and the way the ordinances were at the time, the problem was that a lot of the lots were essentially precluded from being built on. And that was an issue at the time, and the response was, well, that's just what it is. And if you have too small of a lot, you need to get another lot adjacent to it or sell your lot, because you wouldn't be able to build on it, which created a lot of disharmony. But so far it's been not that big of an issue. Although other than that, we have a lot of small lots that are.
I think back in ancient history, you had the resort was selling those lots via phone, via visit, and you get a free radio or transistor or whatever it was.
Free little TV.
Back in those days.
I had one.
Back in those days, you could buy a lot. There wasn't a restriction on the campers.
Right.
I don't think there was the concern there is today about the environment and preserving groundwater and those type of things. So the standards are a lot different today than when those lots were
Right, and there was also a difference in requirement for the septic system. You didn't need as much land.
Well, the use is different too.
Right.
Back then, you came up every fourth Friday. Now it's every Thursday through Sunday.
Through Sunday, yeah.
If not Monday.
Yeah.
So the use has changed. I think people are more mobile. They get to use those type of facilities like that. Getting back to the small lots also, I think part of the issue with tax exempt or tax forfeited lots, I think there were a lot of individual lots that were bought back in the 70s. that people thought they were going to put their trailer on, but they can no longer put the trailer on. They're no longer buildable because they're too small. I think that's led to some of them becoming tax forfeited too.
Yes, that is a big issue, or a big reason on a lot of them. And again, part of it was the septic requirements changed back in the early 2010, 2011, 12 timeframe, where they did require, more land area for the septic system, or you'd have to put in what was referred to as the advanced septic system, which was literally twice as much.
Well, I think some of that is still out there.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at the Osceola Key area.
Mhm.
You have some real tight lots. You've got some real tough soil to deal with, high water tables.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different than the rest of Breezy Point. The rest of Breezy Point is pretty, it percolates pretty well.
Yeah.
And it's mostly sand.
Yeah. I had a question. On factory-built homes, is there any limitation? I mean, I don't mean modular homes now, I mean factory-built homes, which are.
Anything has to have that minimum, meet the minimum size that we have.
Then it's,
And it has to meet the zoning code.
okay. There is a building code for factory-built homes.
It's
then.
not really any different than what the stick-built house is,
Okay,
just that it's built off-site and brought here.
Yeah. Technically, you could bring in a double wide, okay?
well, I've had two modular homes, and they're better than the stick-built homes, and I've had 9 homes.
But
But,
one of the issues has to do with a requirement for the 612 pitch. You're not
yeah,
gonna
and he
get
said
that.
it's not enforceable, because I was looking at that, so why is it even in there?
Well, I think that's, if anything comes out of this discussion, maybe that's one that gets next out of the,
Right, that's the one that should get the biggest scrutiny, and that's probably, when you could refer to that as low-hanging fruit, because that is a significant impediment in what is the actual value that the city is seeing out of that.
Well, one word would change that, 612 minimum, would it not?
it probably would, but then you limit what people can do. They could put a flat roof on it.
No, I said 612 minimum,
I understand that, but
Yeah.
that would
Still can't
eliminate
put-
anybody wanting to do a flat roof.
yes.
Yeah,
And that's,
Or
But if
other
you're-
types of-
that's the intent.
if you're gonna do a Rambler, why would you want a 6-foot or 612 pitch, when a 412 pitch would be just fine?
No, because it's stronger, takes care of the water
If
better.
it meets the UBC, for snow loading for our area, a 412 pitch is just fine. My house in Bloomington had a 412 pitch roof.
I want a 612.
The 612s look really nice and I think the intent there was to have, these houses with the high pitch roof that just look stately, okay? As opposed to the roof that looked like a double wide.
Well,
you know.
anytime you go down, you look at a community, and you can tell what started after World War II,
Yes.
and then you can look at the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can look at the 70s, they got a little bit bigger.
Mm,
Then you start looking at the 80s, and you start seeing the steeples.
yep.
You can tell the evolution of a community
Yeah.
by where it's at.
Yeah, and that is another one of the issues that make a house that is reasonably priced, is if you don't have to have all of this vacant space in a 612 pitch roof with all of the support structure that goes along with it. You can buy 412 trusses, a whole lot cheaper than a 612 truss.
I think some of that is dependent on the width of the
Well, yeah.
building and the type of roof that you have and all that kind
Sure.
of stuff too. You're getting into something that you're trying to engineer something for the consumer
Yeah.
that the consumer doesn't really want. And I think that's the
Yeah.
limitation
So,
that
technically,
segment in the ordinance has.
yeah, technically, we don't allow a gambrel roof. you know, like this and like that,
Right.
right? And those can make a really nice house, you know. They look like a barn, but it can make a really nice
Looks like
house.
a barn. That's right.
When they used to dome house too.
So from a recommendation standpoint, would that be the first one that we want to look at is, can we do something with the pitch of the roof? Would we be wanting to look at something like that? Michael, thoughts on that?
Are you asking just to remove the requirement altogether if we don't have a minimum recommendation for a pitch of a roof?
Well, we would have a minimum, but we would have it less than a 612.
I don't know that you want anything in there, quite frankly.
Well, do we want to have a flat roof or?
I think you can have a flat roof if you want one.
What about the aesthetics of the, what about the?
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Exactly, and what I see is beautiful.
If I can afford the house,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful house to me,
Yes, yes.
okay?
I like some continuity.
Well, and that's kind of where a lot of these requirements came from, because way back when, the whole idea was to make Breezy Point look like a log-sided Woodbury.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, right.
that's where we, you know, got a lot of these restrictions on sizes and roof pitches and that kind of stuff.
Actually, it's where you see continuity, you see architectural review and all that kind of stuff. That is typically in deed restrictions. You buy into that when you buy a lot.
Right.
That's typically not something that a city enforces.
Okay.
I think the only city that I know that enforces something like that is North Oaks.
When I built my house in Apple Valley, they had architectural covenants that the builder basically put down. Everybody had to have this size house with this pitch roof and certain siding and all this other kind of stuff that went along with it.
But that wasn't enforced by the city. That
No,
was
that was-
enforced by the homeowners association and or the developer.
Developer, yeah.
You agreed to that when you bought that lot.
Right, that's exactly right.
It wasn't something that city has in their ordinance.
So like this person, what was it, Copper Root up here, he could do something like that, because he's got like six lots and he could have minimum requirements.
I think Mr. Spizo has that on his townhouse development.
Yes.
He has to approve the design.
Mhm. It has to be, you know, uniform all the way down the line, you know. So those types of things can be handled by a developer. But when we have a lot of dispersed vacant lots, do we still want to have those amenities that are conducive to really high-end houses, you know, throughout?
Jerry, do we have a lot of people asking to deviate from the 612?
You know, honestly, we haven't even been reviewing it. People have come in with their home designs and we haven't really stipulated that they have to have the 612 or whatever. It's basically, if the home meets state standards, state building code, and you like the home, we let them build it.
So essentially what you're saying is we have it as a requirement, but we're not really enforcing it.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay,
It's unenforceable, quite frankly.
yeah. Especially if a person brings in a canned plan that they want to put in, you know, as opposed to a custom design.
Well, that's another thing. Sometimes I have a heck of a time just even getting plans.
Yeah,
But I can honestly say that I'm doing Patrick's job on a part-time basis right now in another community, and that community is worse than this one as far as getting plans for.
yeah. So to keep things moving here, I guess I would say that one of the recommendations we should have to send forth to planning and zoning is to review specifically the roof pitch because we're not really enforcing it, and it is a restriction on paper to people coming in. And right along with that, we just rolled up here to accessory structure height. It took me a long time to figure out and how to calculate that building height, how it's measured. That is another issue that sometimes can be a little bit tough to deal with.
If I get any questions at all, it's number one, can I build a garage? How big can I build a garage? And can I buy this lot and build a garage on it?
Yeah.
Basically. I think Patrick was absolutely right. If we allowed buildings or accessory structures on unimproved lots, we would have a lot more garages than we do.
Right.
Yeah.
We've seen in the last 5 years specifically, we've seen a huge amount of folks that are trying to build what I call toy boxes.
Mhm.
And they're big boy toys that they're putting in these boxes. And they're looking at post-frame buildings, which come with a canned set of plans. They typically want a 13-foot door opening so that they can get the big motorhome or the camper in it. And if you take a 13-foot motorhome with a 13-foot door, you exceed in many cases that height limitation. And we tend to send them back to get either redesigned, or else they come in for a conditional use permit to go to a maximum of 20 feet. I'm thinking that the 15 feet is something that doesn't meet today's times. That if you allow them to go with a conditional use permit to 20, why wouldn't you just make that a requirement rather than making them go through another whole process? Simplify the process is what I'm saying, more than anything else. We do, at the same time, we do have a certain amount of maximum square footage that folks can have based on the size of their lot too. So you wouldn't get anything bigger than 1,280 square feet in a R3 area or someplace else like that. But we do get, people are getting, the accessory buildings are getting bigger and bigger, and they're filling them.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay, well, where are we going here?
I don't know that you have to go anything. I
Okay.
just want to plant the seed, quite
Okay.
frankly.
Well, I like to see something, coming out of this, because we're obviously spending some time here, and that's why they're paying us the big bucks, is to sit here and make decisions. And,
So part of what I think, what we anticipated, because we started here at the city council.
Yeah.
We didn't start at the planning commission. The idea was to get your thoughts, share them with the planning commission, have those thorough discussions there with the guidance that we're hearing
Okay.
tonight and today, and move forward with some direction, and we can update you.
okay,
Is that a fair statement, Jerry?
Mhm.
Yeah.
okay, so what we'd be looking at would be like a joint workshop?
No, I don't think it's necessary at this point in time.
Okay,
Let them start working and see what they come up with working.
Okay.
Maybe they want to ask more questions as they delve into it.
okay,
I think one of the fears, and if you look at the next item on your agenda, is animal husbandry.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
the fear is that the planning commission is gonna spin their wheels on all these things, and they're gonna give something to the city council, and they're gonna throw it back at them.
right,
That's exactly what happened with the animal husbandry issue.
Yep.
And I don't think that's fair to the planning commission, quite frankly, because I think they spend a lot of time on those issues. If they had a better idea that what you're telling them is something that you could support, I think they could work towards that a lot easier than just spinning their wheels, give you something
Yeah.
that you don't support.
Good idea.
So I've got a question. The property that we have, that zone, what's the zoning called? Is
Urban
that
Reserve,
urban reserve? Does that allow, could I buy a couple of horses and put a fence around 10 acres? And
that is the only place you can do that in the city of Breezy Point.
okay,
But you have to do it with an interim use permit, so you still have to pay $500 just to get a horse.
each horse?
Actually, you would apply for an interim use permit to do animal husbandry, and there's a chart in the ordinance that says you can have up to so many animals per 5 acres.
Okay.
So, if you had 10 acres, I think you could have 2 horses.
Or how many chickens?
It's
a whole bunch of chickens.
I don't know that.
It's a whole bunch of chickens.
Whole bunch.
Flock, yeah.
Flock of chickens. So I mean, it varies as to what the animal is. You can have, so many sheep, so many horses, and it's all based on the waste production and that kind of stuff, so.
So I only use that as an example of trying to get to some idea that there is some support from the council to
Yes.
do something so that the planning commission can propose something to the council.
Yeah.
Because it requires ordinance changes.
Right,
The planning commission can only recommend that.
right.
The council would have to buy into it and have to make the change.
Planning commission has to do the work up front and then make the recommendation to the city council to make these changes.
It could come the opposite direction too. It could come from the council thinking that maybe we should do something
Sure.
different. And we think you should consider this. Planning commission, what do you think?
Well, if it's not enforceable, I don't know why it's even in there.
And I think that's Jerry's point is, okay, specifically on roof pitch, we're not really being the stickler on it, okay? If they come in with some plans that meet the UBC and it is something different than a 612 pitch, we're gonna approve the plans and approve the building permit.
Jerry also wanted the planning commission to look at the lot sizes, 2.5 as his example, and I agree with that. I want them to look at that.
I'm not saying it's wrong.
I'm not saying it's wrong either, but I agree with what you were saying.
Then why do you want that looked at?
Restrictive. That was his words, restrictive.
I mean, right now, we're at an economic time where if we can drop some barriers to building in the city, then we can actually improve the number and make more, make builders want to come in here and build more houses. And
Agreed.
That's what we really want to do. And if we have some unreasonable restrictions, I think we could eliminate those.
Yeah, I'm in your camp. I remember when we went to all those big lots thinking, whoa, this is the way to go.
Well, I think that
You opened my eyes.
when you went to the big lots, I think one of the concerns was having to build another treatment plant. And I think that, again, the soils are not the soils aren't dictating that you have to build another treatment.
Right.
So what do you think is a deal size lot limitation?
I think you could get down to 1 acre.
Agreed?
And if you had some soil that didn't support that, maybe it has to be bigger, but I think you probably can get down to 1 acre. Maybe it's 1.5 acres. I don't know what the magic number is. I just know that you get into those 2.5 acre lots, they become hard to assess, and they become junkyards in a large part of it.
Okay, well, that's a good argument. But
Very good argument. I think that's something they really have to look at strongly.
I thought we had the requirement for the 2.5 acres because the fact is we had so many lots already platted that are smaller than that we wanted to keep some from subdividing smaller. If you wanted a smaller lot, we've got a lot to choose from. I thought that was the reason why we'd be stuck with the 2.5 if you subdivided.
I think that's probably, was the thinking at one time. And I think that still could be, something to consider when I think the real issue comes in when in fact you want to improve that road in front of that 2.5 acre lot. I think at that time you should be, the guy with the 2.5 acres might be allowed to get down to something smaller, say an acre or something like that, so that he can recoup some of those costs. And it becomes much easier to get the improvement done.
Agreed.
I don't think it has to be carte blanche. I think as the improvement happens, I think those areas could be looked at and possibly rezoned to a different zoning. I don't know what you call it, R1A or something like that, or R2A or something like that.
So you're talking about look at lots on an individual basis?
No, I'm talking about an area. Again, I think it's food for thought.
It'd be interesting to see on the map how many parcels would actually be eligible to be split right now.
Jerry's looking at the wall right now, looking at a map, kind of getting an idea, Michael.
I think anytime you look in these areas of wooded residential, estate lots, even some of the R1 areas.
Are you hearing that, Michael?
Yep, I'm hearing you.
How many parcels? I don't know how many parcels are out there. I'm looking at it more as a concept than as a individual parcel thing.
Oh, the majority of them are in the northwest territory of Breezy Point, correct?
Right, and there's some in the south also.
You sure? Yep. I guess I wouldn't be opposed to re-looking at it to see if an acre and a half would be something feasible, but I mean, to go much smaller, again, we've got plenty of parcels that if you want a smaller property, we've got that.
Is there anything in there that says the building has to meet state codes or county codes or as a minimum? Or is it based on what we want as a minimum, as far
Well,
as?
the minimum size is what you dictate. The code, as far as building is concerned, is an ordinance that the city has adopted, and they enforce the building code.
So our building code is at least as stringent as most of the building, state and county codes in the state.
This,
Well, technically, everybody is supposed to build to code.
Yeah,
Not every jurisdiction enforces the code.
but we do.
Breezy Point does. The area around Breezy Point does not.
Everybody around us does not enforce it.
right.
And if you're in the county, they do not enforce it.
I've heard that. I just, if we're gonna take the pitch thing completely out of the picture, to me, there has to be something that we have. And I guess we do have pretty good codes, but that protect the city from,
For example, if you built a flat roof, you can build it to code as a flat roof. Same with any other pitches, you just have to have the different rafters and joists and all that to make it work.
The code is not addressing the pitch, it's addressing the snow load. And the snow load varies throughout the state, you know. And so as long as you have a roof that can handle so many pounds per square foot for your area, it's an acceptable.
And that is my big
Yes.
concern.
Yeah,
I mean,
so if you- if-
drive down the highway here and there's to Duluth and there's several buildings that caved this winter and last winter.
Well, yeah, that was,
You
yeah,
had a point?
Michael.
What I was just going to say is building code is functional. City code ordinances is aesthetics.
That's
Is what it's
one,
coming
that's
down
one of the
to.
way of, yeah, that's
We
one way
like
of putting
the
it.
look of the 612, but
Yes.
functionally, you can build anything, and there's engineers that can engineer it to make it work. So a flat roof can work functionally, but aesthetically, our ordinance says we don't like the look of it. Therefore, don't bring it to Breezy Point.
Yes.
Well, that was one of my arguments for keeping the 612 as a minimum, but,
That was my argument also.
you know, when I built my
Aesthetics.
shed, I had it built, and he said, well, he told me you have to have the joists 18 foot apart, or 18 inches on 18-inch centers. And then when the guys came and put it up, he said, why did you do that? Your roof is stronger than the roof on your house. Well, I said, because the building code guy here told me to do it. Now, later, I don't think he realized that he said that. But it was only 125 bucks extra. That roof I could park my truck on. But I am concerned about aesthetics. If you're talking
So am
about
I.
an area with a lot of nice homes and people that, you know, like to come and say, we're our place in Breezy Point, you ought to come up there. This is really a nice little town.
I think what we could do is have the planning commission look at what a 612 and a 412 and all the different roofs, that's part of the group, working group's discussion. And so that they can bring that back to you too, to give you an idea, because frankly, I couldn't tell you the difference.
Me either.
So I think that's part of the working group's discussion. So
Right.
what I've got down is roof pitch, lot size review, and then maybe even some house size discussion.
You know, one thing I was going to ask you, Patrick, and just bring up, you know, Tom kind of mentioned, you know, now's the time to make some changes and potentially bring some more builders to the area, right, Tom? That was
Yes.
kind of your statement.
Yep, that's indeed true.
You know, with last year's statistics, Patrick, wasn't Breezy Point one of the highest new construction building permits pulled for the year in the county?
You're referencing that workforce housing study?
No, just the number of buildings.
Yeah.
Number of houses.
I don't know that I had a comparison for anybody. I know that our average value of house was over $300,000. But I don't know that I had what
Okay.
anybody else had built.
I don't know what last
So we
year
don't know.
was. I don't know what last year was compared to other years, or compared to other communities. I do know that previous years, I think the previous 5 years, we had more building permits than any other community in Crow Wing County,
And you could say that for the whole 20th century.
probably.
So there's your answer.
Saying is oh, go ahead.
We're seeing building, and there are a lot of homes being built in Breezy Point. The problem is you don't see them because Breezy Point is so spread out and it's got so many trees, and you can't hear the nail guns going off all the time, but there is a lot of activity going on, but you just don't see it from County Road 11.
Right.
You have to get off County Road 11 in order to see some of that activity.
Well, here's what happened in the home we looked at when we were looking to buy it. It's a trot home, built just like all the rest. The couple that bought it, his design for moving the air and stuff was completely stupid. So they left food in the refrigerator and the whole thing. They moved out and sued Trout because the home was all mold, full of mold. Some woman bought it for $140,000. I think she paid too much for it because of what's gonna take to take care of all that mold. I mean, they said they want the window casings, everything replaced. But there's a case of, yeah, he built $360,000 home that, I don't know what, but how do we look at things like that when homes are built? Or do we even look at them?
One of the reasons you have building codes is it's for the protection of the homeowner. To make sure that the builders build it to code.
That's why I voted for
If
it.
it's built to code, you shouldn't have those issues that you're talking about.
Well, it's a
Now,
case
there are
of,
some times when it does happen. And many times it's because somebody just leaves and doesn't maintain their house after it's built.
that wasn't the case. The house was very nice, the lot and everything, but they had torn up the kitchen floor because there's mold underneath it. They had to cut sheetrock out of the basement. There was mold inside the walls. His system of moving the air was almost nil. It was terrible. I can see why that home had a problem, but,
Was that built before the code was in place?
well, when did Trout build homes? It's right here on
He's
Breezy
been building
Point.
homes for a
I
long
have to-
time.
It's right over in this area.
There's today there's an air exchange code that has to be
Right.
done. If you build it to the code, you shouldn't have that problem.
Well, I'm sure, I believe they won their case because that home went for 140. It was a nice exterior, looking at the home, very nice. You go inside, it was clean, but it had that mold problem, and they had a baby that had a mold sensitivity. And they just moved right out, left everything in the refrigerator, the whole thing, and filed a lawsuit against Trout.
Is it a brand new house?
It was. Well, it's not brand new. It was like 2 years old, a year and a half, 2 years old, enough so that the mold thing.
If you give us the address of that, we can do some checking on it.
Well, I'd have to drive over there, but it's just northwest here, less than a mile, or north, west northwest.
Northwest.
So we've had this discussion, and I think we've got some direction there. Are there we identified a bunch of other items. Do you want to talk about those a little bit, or are you satisfied that, I know we've got work. There's no question about that, what we've talked about today. But other topics, we had VRBOs, we had the accessory structure discussion. Then we also talked about Bushman and disc golf and community center. So anybody have a topic you specifically wanted us to touch on?
I mean, we could spend hours on each one of these
Correct.
topics. Why don't you give us an update on the Bushman Road? Is there anything new happening there?
Not since I updated you.
Okay.
I went on vacation, then we came back, and then coronavirus hit us, so I haven't had much on that,
Right,
so.
okay. As far as the VRBO goes, the county has that basically on, let's call it pocket hold. They put it in their back pocket and they're holding it there. And there's probably not going to be a whole lot of discussion on that because I think right now it's about 2.5 to 2.5 for votes on that. So I don't expect to see a whole lot of that. I went to the meeting and been to a couple other meetings on it. In fact, we had one issue during the Board of Adjustment. The state, if you were listing your house on VRBO, they were classifying it as a commercial. And the one person had theirs classified as commercial, and they were able to convince them that it was residential because they didn't rent that many times. So we expect to see maybe more of these come down the pike when this starts to settle out a little bit. But that is done at the state level. The county was talking about having more restrictions and tighter control over the VRBOs. And that's kind of where it is sitting right now. I would say, well, I think they have it postponed until like December of this year. So it's not going to be moving forward very much at all.
Probably postponed until after the election.
It's definitely after the election.
I should say something about that.
Yeah.
Our ordinance today specifies where it can happen and where
Right.
it can't. And it's pretty limited as far as where it can happen.
Right.
Except for the ones that were pre-existing 2013, I think.
Something like- yeah.
The ordinance came into effect. The county's proposal kind of conflicts with ours.
It does, very definitely.
And it doesn't take into consideration any local control that jurisdictions would have.
Right.
And the way that's proposed today is that if Tom wants to do it, he goes to the county and gets a license. To do it, the county gives him a license. Tom assumes that he can do that at Breezy Point. He hasn't asked Breezy Point whether he can do that yet.
Yeah.
He goes in and does this rental, and Breezy Point says, well, you can't do that anymore because you're not zoned appropriately to
Right.
rent your house more than 4 times per year.
Yeah. Need to have a
So there's
conditional
a
use
conflict
permit. Yeah,
between the county's proposal today and what we have in place today.
yeah. And essentially, our ordinance that we have enforced in place today is virtually unenforceable, you know, because we don't have any real teeth into it. It's gonna be complaint driven. So if somebody complains that they have a VRBO next to them, if they don't complain, we're not gonna do anything on it.
I can honestly say that we got more complaints 5 years ago than we do now. I think that whole thing has taken down a lot.
One of the things that came out of one of the meetings, I don't know if it was I think it was the Chamber of Commerce meeting, VRBO, the organization, is a lot stricter on having the owners control the residents or the people they rent to, because they have been getting a lot of complaints on the party houses and this kind of stuff.
Yep.
They are putting the onus back to the owner to make sure that they enforce their noise ordinances and, you know, quiet times and this kind of stuff.
I think that's a reflection of the fact that there have been complaints.
Yes,
If they don't do something positive, then there will be some restrictions
Yeah.
placed on it down the line.
Yeah.
I think that's the fear.
yeah, there must have been 50 people in the room, maybe 20 or some like that were resort owners who were dead set against this. And then there was other, you know, people that were against, or basically against VRBOs, and a bunch of people kind of neighbors of VRBOs that had party houses. And then there was some VRBO owners who were very much in favor of not having restrictions.
I think with the interest rates, the way they are today, you saw a lot of folks buying that.
Yeah.
Buying properties for that specific intent.
Mhm.
I don't know how far we really need to go in trying to enforce what we have,
Right,
other than to wait for complaints. The other thing that gets involved in this whole thing is property owners' rights. And
Yeah.
you're taking away my rights to make a living.
and one of the big things, you know, we require people to have a interim use permit to have a VRBO. And
Right.
we don't really, you know, I think is there one?
There's one since we've
Yeah,
adjusted the ordinance.
yeah. And
Yes.
the other thing is you have to be on city sewer. And
Yeah.
how many are on city sewer? Very few of them, you know. That's a very small number of units that would be on city sewer.
We
that
know
are
that
being-
there's some on Osseo,
Mhm.
that of course are not on city sewer.
Right.
And we know that because we visited the website and see some of that, but
Oh, yeah, and there's a bunch of them out in the woods, you know, that are not on the water, so.
we have quite a bit of them that actually the resort has traditionally been the manager and the rental managers of those properties.
Yeah.
They actually are kind of, they supplement each other
Yeah.
more than they conflict with each other.
Yeah, and the other thing is we require that the property owner be the manager. You know, we don't recognize VRBO being the manager. And so that's in conflict with our ordinance. So our ordinance, essentially the way it's written, is not only virtually unenforceable, but it is significantly in conflict with the way the industry is being run, as well as what the county is looking at.
It's also, I think it's been a tradition in Breezy Point, ever since Breezy Point's been around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of an inherent practice.
Question, if I may. Patrick, that police bust I alluded to in the paper here a couple weeks ago or 10 days ago, was that a VRBO house? You were going to check into it?
I checked on the other facts, not where it was located. So, sorry, I thought I was supposed to be checking on some other things, and I didn't check on where.
Okay.
So I can follow up with you.
Please do. I'm curious about
I
that.
was gonna give you an update, but.
Thank you. No, that's fine. You just do your due diligence and then ring my bell. Fine.
I missed you wrote a letter to the editor or something, or?
No. There was a letter in the paper,
Oh.
Brainerd paper, in the police.
Oh.
And Breezy Point. You rarely see, as we all know, Breezy Point making a paper on a police stop or something. But I always read that at Breezy Point, and there was a party house 10 days ago, 12 days ago approximately, that the police busted. Young people raising holy hell, and somebody called in and complained. And I didn't know what the results of that were, and I asked Patrick to check into it for me because I was very curious. And that's why I brought up the VRBO tied right in it. So that's it. No,
Okay,
I didn't write a letter.
I think that was just a party. Wasn't necessarily a rental.
It was I don't know, it was a party, and it was way out of control from the way the paper said.
So, bottom line is, I think our entire VRBO position needs to be reevaluated, but the county's not moving on it. So, we could reevaluate to something more reasonable. Hopefully, we get some people to comply with it. But
I think if the county's gonna do something with licensing of those facilities, I would think that from a elected official standpoint, maybe you could lobby so that we could get consulted prior to them issuing the license.
Yeah.
The way it's constructed, they were not going to consult with the local jurisdictions. They were just gonna issue them.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
Well, part of that is very few local municipalities have any ordinances on them whatsoever. I think they had a spreadsheet, and I think there was only about 4 or 5 municipalities in all of Crow Wing County that even had anything addressing them.
Then it shouldn't be as big of an issue as if all of them had some.
Right, and that, I think that was part of the county saying, we're gonna be the kingpins, and we're gonna say, you have to have a license from the county, and everybody else, just get out of the way.
We can certainly do that if they consulted with the city.
Right.
It was
Yeah, and
a place to have it.
that was kind of my discussion with Bill Brecken as well, as far as, ours is way more restrictive than what they have, but they do have a lot of the commonality things as far as, getting the state health in there and get inspections and that kind of stuff. Okay, well, we've been at this for an hour and a half.
2 o'clock was your cutoff point, Mr. Mayor, but
Well, that was assuming we were going to start at noon.
yeah, that's right, so we got 10 minutes.
Right.
I'm willing to stay as long as you need.
Well, I got a daughter that's in labor right now, so I'm kind of anxious. Community center feasibility study. That's one thing we did allocate money for, to say, what do we want to have for a community center?
Currently, right now, I've obtained couple of feasibility studies from larger communities.
Okay.
And I've shared it with the liaison of the park committee, the chair of the park committee, and we've had some discussions. And I think it was eye-opening as to far as what's out there, what we really need to do as groundwork before we go and spend some money on a consultant. And so I think maybe
Okay.
that's more of an update kind of thing.
That's-
that we
that's
are
more-
working on it.
Yeah, that's more what I was looking at, because I know we have people that want the, you know, they want basically a community center that has this, this, and this, and then we have the people that says, we want the community center to have all of this, and we want the pool, and we want the library, and we want, you know, elevator going between the 5th and 6th floors. You know, and that may not necessarily be what we can, our population would support.
Right. I also wanted to make sure, remind you of the dollars that we have there.
Yep.
And give you an example of where these dollars go. For example, these maps that I included in your packets that I'm showing on the screen right now. Had Joe Duble create those for us. It cost us $600. It's like,
Just to have them put the lines in the,
yeah, to add the line, so nothing's cheap around here.
no. Anytime you have a consultant, being that I was one at one time, you're talking about dollars.
But we have enough to keep going.
Yeah, okay.
And I think the next time would be just for you guys to think about what we talked about today, and then in maybe a month or two, say, let's plan the next workshop, a blank date kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate your time and the direction you've given us. Thank you.
Yep, and obviously number 6 is my pet project, that if you notice, that's the 0 on the adopted final levy, was minimum maintenance roads. I think that's something that, in personal opinion, I think that is something we would really like to consider at some point in time, because that can give us the biggest bang for the buck for getting rid of a lot of these tax forfeit properties. So, that's my own personal
That's your
opinion.
sole reason for it, or?
That's my sole reason for existence.
And clarify that for me.
We have a lot of
Please.
tax forfeit properties on a minimum maintenance road, okay?
Yes.
These, we will not issue a building permit on a minimum maintenance road.
Correct.
And what I would like to see is when we have a road project or something like that, get the contractor to come in and upgrade that minimum maintenance road to gravel status.
I remember you talking about
Just
that, thank
a
you.
minimum improvement on that.
I
And then we can start building on these things.
I remember you talking about that, I'm 100%
Yeah. and
on
so-
board with that.
Well, you weren't 100% before when I
Now
got
I am.
money for it.
Now I am.
So a question, why not wait till a contractor says, you know, these are some nice lots, I'll build in here if you will upgrade that road?
Sure, that would be nice, you know.
We actually have been talking to one developer near Tom's home and property that did actually survey, send out a notice to all, and we give the builder all the addresses and the neighbors who they would have to contact, and they have had those conversations. I can tell you we've also had that with people on, just off of Northwoods, on Pine Center or Pine Circle Road, because there's some housing going on over there. So we are having these discussions, but then the dollars come into play too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a road situation where already that should have been taken care of years ago, and now we're trying to catch up. I have no problem with contractor, if somebody wants to build and says, you know, I'll build 3 new homes in here if you'll upgrade this half-mile road, and that we feel that is appropriate. I have a problem with just going in and updating roads when we already have 400 lots or something for sale. That, you know, that's my point of contention.
Yeah. And I guess my feeling is that if we would open up some of these lots that are really cheap, the tax forfeit lots, because right now they are priced at a price point because they are unbuildable.
Yes.
Okay? If we would say, okay, we're gonna blink first, we're gonna spend the city money to upgrade this road to gravel status, then we would eventually get that back because the developer would come in and buy up those tax forfeit properties and build on them. Because
Well-
he knows he can get the lot cheap.
I might be open to one road as a test. But because of the road situation,
Sure. Well, we do have some of them basically just north of where you are, just on the north side of County Road 11, that have 20 or 30 tax forfeit properties on one road. And by upgrading those, we could open those things up to development.
I agree with that.
Speak, Jerry.
Just a thought, that it's never gone very far.
I know.
I mentioned this before, but if you had 20 or 30 lots that are tax forfeited on a roadway.
Yeah.
Like 11.
Okay,
That's like-
any road.
That's a good spot.
But if you had-
Catskill up in that area.
But if you had that many tax forfeited lots, why couldn't you talk to the county about, the county turning those lots over to the city city putting in the improvement and selling those lots for development as improved lots?
Yeah. We,
I know that this council in the past has never wanted to get into the land business,
right.
but I think when it comes, ultimately, someday they are probably gonna have to get in the land development business in order to clear some of those tax forfeited lots.
Yeah.
I think that's the way the mayor's heading.
Well, Patrick and I have talked about this a little bit in the past. And the problem is, even though we have a whole bunch of tax forfeit lots, a large number of them, the dollar value is not really conducive to HRA helping us out.
I'm not saying you need HRA help, I think you can do it by yourself.
Yeah, that's the way I understood what you were saying. You're gonna be we're gonna be the developer. And I think that's a good investment.
well, that woman, that was the situation where she sent a letter or something, she said she'd take 12,000 for the lot if she could get it.
Right.
Was that was on an improved road, was it not?
That was a
Now,
buildable.
I don't know what the lot looks like, it could be a lot of other reasons, but it sounds to me like there's still quite a few lots for sale that are on buildable roads that people aren't interested in. And so I feel we have to be careful about improving roads. That's why I said if there was one road that we thought had more potential than the rest, I'd be open to it. But I'm not in favor of just improving a bunch of roads because we think that they're gonna sell.
Okay, I'd like to address that.
Okay.
I think this has to be done on a small scale, and you pick a choice property like the mayor suggested. I'm very familiar with that, those properties. On a small scale. You bust one road or you improve one road and that's the access from 11 when they're coming from Minneapolis right into Breezy Point.
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful idea. And the city being the developer, which is a bit of a different animal, if you will, but I like that idea. And the returns on that for the city, I think down the road, which I probably won't see, but it will be excellent, phenomenal. One small project
Yeah,
as a test bed.
I would be open to that.
Thank you. And that's the only way I would like to see it gone, but these two guys got some good stuff going in their heads about developing these lots, and the mayor's been instrumental in that. And this is a great idea, and the last comment only is for the last 3 or 4 years, people have been screaming in this city and again in this comp plan for, and I hate that word, affordable housing. And this is a classic example of it, guys. And girl, if you're down there, I guess you're not. It really is. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Well, I gotta say, I've learned quite a bit today. Both before noon and some afternoon.
No, I totally agree with what you say. We can't do all that stuff. We can't even think about that. But on a small scale, where he talked about coming into the city, wow.
With that, I would suggest that you're ready to adjourn the meeting.
Yep. I was gonna say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just doing a quick count. Catskill is one of the biggest ones. Then there must be,
Sun Valley,
Sun Valley's even worse. Well, Catskill's pretty long, but it's got a large number of tax forfeit properties on it. And it's kind of a mixture. There's some houses up there, but a lot of tax forfeits.
Do we have to do the full length of the road?
No.
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 Good Lord, no.
This would be the type of thing that we would pick a small one
Yep.
and at least open it up. Because when we've been talking to some of these builders and stuff, the big thing was the fees and stuff like that, the building fees and what they were
Yes.
about that. But the price of the lot had to be down to a point where they could make the house that they build to be a reasonable price, so people would buy it.
Sure.
So,
That excites me. That really does.
oh yeah, it's been exciting me for years, but
Well, I know, you've pushed on it for a long time, and you're right.
I mean, it's one of these things, we've looked into the past as to how all this transpired, and a lot of it had to do with developer said he was gonna put in these roads when people put houses on them, and people never built, and the developer went away. And so now we're sitting here with a bunch of properties that nobody wants to build on, but they got their little tiny black and white TVs. I had one. So,
Tell you what, I love having the 10-acre lot thing. We've got one of the nicest neighborhoods we've ever lived in. We've lived in many places. And that road back, Nickel Road, and back in there, those people, we get together 2 or 3 times a year, have a barbecue, and they come. My wife has a Christmas thing, and the women all come, and it's just the nicest. And when somebody's in trouble, everybody's there to help. And it's one of the coolest places I've ever lived.
well, we'll just have to get some VRBOs back there.
Yeah.
Actually, I thought about getting a couple mules. No, it's been good.
Okay, so I get to bang my gavel again. We're adjourned.
All right.
Bingo.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.